Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our 4 Steps to Smarter Social Media webinar. Today, we are responding to a need that has come up a lot among members of our Center for Citizen Diplomacy Network, which is how do we better leverage social media for thought leadership and audience engagement. Here at Pyxera Global, we've had the opportunity to learn a lot of lessons in the past 2 years about best practices in social media as we've launched 2 new brands and we've transformed a third in the past few years. And so we're going to spend the next 30 minutes to share some of those lessons with you, to break down the business value of social media, as well as provide tips and resources to better position yourself or your organization online. As the good social media practitioners we are, please send any questions you may have using the hashtag PyxeraGlobal25. And so today we're very pleased to have the opportunity to co-host this webinar with 3BL Media, which is a leading news distribution and content marketing company. So now I'm going to pass the mic to our co-host, Suzanne Medor, who is the Director of Social Media and Engagement at 3BL Media. So Suzanne, if you want to take it from here.
Sure. All right, making sure that the delay in transferring over has happened. Thank you, Melissa, for the warm welcome. And huge thank you to Pyxera Global for inviting us over at 3BL to join you in this webcast. Quick refresher for those of you who are not familiar with 3BL Media. We are a multi-channel news and content distribution platform focusing specifically on corporate social responsibility and sustainability type news. So in that idea of think of those traditional press releases and beyond, to include things like blogs, videos, photos, and more. So our distribution network covers things, like traditional media, but we go beyond to our unique community of email subscribers, bloggers, affiliates, and of course, our robust social network as well, which covers, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. So today I've got a few pieces that I will cover, and then hopefully that'll lead really nicely into some of the more specifics that Melissa and the Pyxera crew will be going into. So a few touch points that I will talk about today is, of course, why social media matters. Why it's important, what's the business value here. I know that's often a question any of us who work with social media or are curious about it want to get into. Then, of course, perfect for us to join in at 3BL is the role of media partnerships. Working with Pyxera, 3BL, we've had a great relationship and done quite a few great events, and I'll kind of dive into a couple of those examples. And then also share with you some of the best practices that I have come across as a social media professional, as well as from the 3BL perspective as well. And so with that, I will cue Melissa and Max to cue me up to the first slide here. So peanut butter and jelly go hand in hand. You think of peanut butter, you think of jelly, you think of jelly, you think of peanut butter. And this is really, the early phases of where social media and CSR and communications go together. We really want one to kind of be synonymous with the other in everybody's strategic plans. So social media, for those of us working any part of social, whether you're straight at PR, communications, working in an organization to help get out the news and awareness, come to find out that it's an expectation now. Social media is expected in your form of doing business, whether you are B2B or B2C. Some of you who are kind of knee waist deep in social media have probably also heard of the term P2P or H to H, which is people to people or human to human. So regardless of your business type, social media is sort of expected for that way of communicating and a two-way communicating. Because as we all know, good and bad news happens, especially those of us in a professional standpoint. We all see, on the news, somebody did something stupid, it comes out on social media. an employee represented poorly, how do you scramble and get it together? So the big piece is are you listening to social media? Even before we dive down into, how are you using social media, are you listening? Those conversations are happening out there. What are people saying? Are you listening? Are you learning? Are you being active? Kind of comes up to be the next piece. And what I kind of bring up for this piece about being active is, a steady beat of good news. In the CSR and sustainability space, we've all kind of heard one company or another be accused of greenwashing. However, if you're using any form of communication, be that social, traditional wire releases, etc., if you have that steady content coming out about your good content, your responsibility, all of the good, volunteerism efforts that your company and organization is doing, it becomes much more reliable, much more believable. You add that layer of transparency to your communications. It's not, oh, okay, so, company X, Y, and Z had, bad news, so now they're going to start, showing off the good things that they're doing. It becomes a steady drumbeat so that everyone knows that, yeah, bad things happen, but here's all the good that they're working on a regular basis. It's part of that transparency, which consumers, B2B, B2C, are all expecting that layer of transparency because, they want to know what's happening. They want to know that you're a legitimate company. They want you to be a human, even behind the brand. So be shy, but don't, get it out there. So don't be shy with this news. You want to be out there, be real, be that company's mission, be that statement. And, one of the things that we here at 3BL like to talk about is that third-party endorsement as well. When you're working with us, folks come to our site and look for our affiliates to look for that content because they're looking for that good sources of news. Companies, organizations, we're expected. And social media has become this powerhouse of communication for social media. So we are really being able to not only share the news, but engage in content with stakeholders, with other potential customers, even employee advocacy has become a huge piece. And it also allows for organization to organizations to have these conversations and then easily integrate that in with, that end consumer and prospect who might be working or using with us. So social media really opens up this massive door. And so every campaign, every piece of communication, every piece of news has some way of being integrated into social media. And, one of those things is just a matter of getting in there. But of course, many of us still, and so I know some of you have probably dealt with this as well, is, well, social media is free. What's the value? Who's on there? Someone's just tweeting about what they had for dinner, and those types of things. And, those things are always sort of true. However, you need to go out and find your audience, which is a piece that I will get into in a little bit, as well as Melissa. But just a matter of, being aware that there is business value here. There is case for it. There's been a handful of studies done throughout the last few years. Cone Communications actually did one recently in 2013. And, some of the stuff they pulled out from there is really good stuff. Walking away with just a couple bullet points of nuggets of why social media is important. 29% of organizations are using, or rather consumers, let me try that again, 29% of consumers are using social media to learn more about specific organization and issues. But it also states that 70% are confused by corporate social responsibility messages. Think about that 200-page report. So that right there can tell you, like, okay, so the 200-page report can be a little overwhelming. Social media is a great way to communicate and break that down and really have those engaging conversations. And 2/3 of global consumers are using social media to talk about companies about their CSR. So that is something that should be considered when, well, do we make this more social? Do we add a social component to our strategy to communicate? The answer overwhelmingly should be yes. There's other studies that have gone out. There was recently the Global Sustainable Brands Conference out on the West Coast. And even there, they talked about, CSR communications lagging in some of those social networks, that consumers and other organizations are looking for this news, are looking for this content to help, build their understanding, but also shape some loyalties to get those little bits of information that maybe they're not aware of. So think about, right now we're sort of in that phase of, we've got the 2 slices of bread, we've got the peanut butter and the jelly in the jar, and it's just really figuring out, how to structure the sandwich, the peanut butter and jelly land. So there's a lot of value for it. A couple quick Google searches about, the value of social and CSR definitely can bring you out some pieces. But the huge piece right now, which, as I just mentioned, you can kind of go out and Google. Google right now is working with Twitter, and they've already unrolled the mobile component, but social media is now searchable. So if you want folks to find your content, the one nugget people can walk away from my little spiel here this morning is essentially social media is now searchable. So if you want random people, those people who are going out and Google typing these keywords that maybe you didn't necessarily know were out there, can now go and type in a few keywords. You want your report to show up. You want the good work that you're doing to come up and be in front of them. So now, boom, Google has made that a powerhouse. The Google Plus thing didn't necessarily work out the way they wanted to, but we all know that Twitter is a massive powerhouse for media communications, and so Google and Twitter are playing nice, and this is something that we all should consider when we are putting together our communication strategy. Which leads me into the next piece about media partnerships. If you guys want to go ahead, perfect. So media partnerships are a very powerful piece of the social media building. So you have, all of your different organizations, you have your presence. Maybe it's not, as big as you'd like it to be, and, you're still working on growing it and refining it. But think about some of those partnerships that you have, those other organizations that you work with. In this case here, I'm going to talk about a Twitter chat. We at 3BL worked with Pyxera last fall, but they also brought in other partners that they work with. So they brought in Merck for Mothers, Jacaranda Health, specifically their Kenya focus, as well as USAID. And so with that, we were all able to put together our networks. We were all able to get a very specific topic built up. In this case, we were talking about global pro bono and maternal health, which are very important topics, of course. And we were all able to get together and promote this event, to talk about it. And what we were able to do is strengthen the relationship, of course, we had with Pyxera. They were, we had a really great relationship building this event, promoting the event. It also strengthened their relationship with their partnership organizations that worked on this project with them. And together, we put together this awesome 1-hour chat where we were able to bring all of these organizations into the spotlight to talk about the work that they were doing, and specifically how to get other people involved. Because you need to remember, when working in social media, so much of it is not about you and your organization and the good work that you're doing. It's part of your plan to get that message out there, but you really want to turn it around to bring other people's interest in, and, oh, wait, that sounds great, I want my organization to get more involved, which was part of the goal that Pyxera had for this chat, is to get more people talking about how they could get involved in projects like this one. Things to remember is partnerships are a two-way street. So in this case, yes, 3BL, we were hosting this chat for them, but it was all about Pyxera, and Pyxera in turn made it all about their partners and the accomplishments that this particular project had done. There's a lot of different ways to think about these partnerships. So yes, we at 3BL Media specifically, we're a great media partner. We have those audiences who are very interested in sustainability, maternal health, women empowerment, technology, green energy, name it. We can niche down different categories within the CSR and sustainability space. However, there's also other ways to look at partnerships as well. Mommy bloggers, I know a handful of folks may roll their eyes on that one, but there's been some great power built behind those mommy bloggers. We actually worked with Global Impact a few months ago, and they had a tremendous relationship with a mommy blogger group who was a powerhouse on social, and they were able to bring everything together and have a really relevant mini chat within a longer campaign that we had worked on. Think about, the other avenues and that audience you're trying to reach. Michelin has done a recent campaign of Beyond the Driving Test, where they're really trying to reach those teenagers and their parents who learning to drive. Driver's ed teaches you some things, but then there's other things that you miss, like car maintenance. So they went out and they found YouTube stars. Those guys get that age group because they are that age group, and they have a tremendous amount of influence. Celebrities may be the way to go as well. We work with Yum Brands, and they recently do the Pass the Red Cup campaign, which they had Christina Aguilera kind of be the celebrity spokesperson. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of figure out, who that media partner is for you, by thinking about, who are you trying to reach? What are your goals? What do you want this campaign to get out and in front of people? And probably right now, in the land of giving and nonprofits, the biggest one that we have going on right now, which is entirely on Twitter, is Giving Tuesday, which if you guys haven't checked it out, generally it's the first or second Tuesday in December, and tries to jump into that holiday spirit instead of going crazy in all the big box stores, give back and to all of these different charitable organizations for the holidays. And so if we go on to the next slide, I'll give a little bit more information about this event that we did. So we have today, this is part of the Pyxera Global 25th anniversary. So, celebrating the 25th year of purposeful global engagement for Pyxera, which is an amazing accomplishment. So kudos to everyone over at Pyxera. But they're not just putting out news releases. They're not just having events. We're all in this webcast right now. They've had a handful of others that have been going on. I know there's one or two coming up in the schedule again. So they're going to these different touch points. And so that's one thing to consider with building events, with building these media partnerships, is to think about, the different ways to get your message out there. So when we talked with Pyxera last fall about doing a potential Twitter chat, they had just wrapped up this massive campaign over in Kenya to try to improve, the maternal healthcare space. And some of it was, administration, some of it was actually training staff, some of it was just getting the word out. We also, promoted it as a press release. We talked about it on Twitter, of course. We had folks engaging on LinkedIn. We put it out to our entire distribution network because maybe someone isn't going to catch that piece on Twitter. They're going to catch it in an email and then go, oh, great, I need to go on Twitter on this day to be involved. And the thing here is have some fun, be real. That piece I mentioned before about being authentic. And having those partnerships be involved. So, quickly in this image here that's up on your screens, this is the team having fun getting ready for the chat. Kind of saying, okay, we're here, we're going to have this formal discussion, but on the same token, like, we are real people. We're not just sort of this blank company organization, voice coming from Twitter. So you really want to let people know who you are and what you're doing. And if we click over to the next piece, we can also talk about the results, because of course with social media you kind of get those questions and those pushbacks about, well, what's the point of doing social period, and then what's the point of maybe investing in a Twitter chat or doing a little extra work to work with a particular media partner or celebrity or some other organization. Is have your goals ready. Who do you want to reach? And then build that into your campaign as you're working it. So with Pyxera's example, they wanted to reach a couple different organizations where they could potentially start a conversation about how they could work together. We wanted to make sure we reached a really wide volume audience, and we wanted some pickup from others out on the web that were potentially interested and had audiences that would be interested in the topic that we were bringing to the table on Twitter. So this is just some quick snapshots of some of that information. We have, how many potential accounts were reached, how many people potentially saw those tweets, and those were some really powerful numbers. Again, we set this all in to our event from the beginning. so that it made it easy to track throughout. And a few faces in here as well. Some of the other accountant organizations, GlaxoSmithKline showed up, the Global Water Commission showed up, as well as Be a Girl and the Global Health Council. So these were some other powerful, big organizations that were able to chime in and support the work, talk about why it's important, and really get a larger dialogue happening. And so with that, it's really important to make sure that you're having the right partners in all of this. So again, we talked about Pass the Red Cup with young brands. For them, using a celebrity was the right way to really build a large awareness. There was also some fundraising around that. With the Her Day piece that I mentioned earlier, Global Impact was really looking to connect with women around the world. So focusing on some mommy bloggers hit a part of their audience, which is why it was a supplement to a larger campaign that they did. So there's always different ways of breaking down your campaign to fit into one strategic piece. And then lastly, of course, is knowing what your goals are. So at the end, you can see what worked really, really well, and maybe some of the areas that you need to tweak or fine tune moving forward. And then I'll kind of quickly move on to some best practices and let Melissa take the show. So social media, as you all know, there's a million networks out there. They all have a different kind of purpose and goal. You hear things broken down as photo sharing or micro blogs or true social networks. Overdrive Interactive does a great snapshot of breaking all of these networks down into these different buckets of, what's photo sharing, what's good for social recruiting. And this is a really good map, and you can download it for free. I kind of try to keep updated with it all the time, because when you're looking for that plan, when you're looking for that strategy, it's like, okay, I have my goals. I want to reach X number of people, or I want to get more organizations involved. I want to get forms filled out. I want to get shares, etc. This is a great place to kind of start to figure out what networks. Of course, you want to go where your people are. However, this is a good way to kind of maybe take a step back and make sure that you're hitting all of the right networks for what it is that you want to accomplish. You really want to have those pieces built from the beginning. And I love to kind of go out and test a new network here and there and see if it's, worth the time. Are the right people there? And that's sort of a little bit of a separate issue, but it's also kind of good to always know what's out there, because there's probably 5 new social networks born since we started this piece here. But one thing, I kind of like to advise folks when they're asking about social media questions of me when I'm working with our media consultants or sales folks over at 3BL is, do your social media well. And of course, we all strive to do that. But what I mean by that is make sure you do your research. And this isn't hours of research on social media. We're talking, less than a minute, 30 seconds here, maybe 15 seconds there. Make sure that you're tagging, on Twitter, another organization that you're working with. Make sure that you're using the right link. Make sure you're tagging your own organization properly. Some of these may seem a little silly, but you'd be surprised that I see these a few more times than I should. Use hashtags. Hashtags are an insanely easy way to boost the visibility of your tweets. Again, just spend, 30 seconds to a minute and boost your content, make it a little bit more refined. So maybe you're writing 3 tweets instead of 5, but maybe those 3 tweets are absolutely outstanding versus those 5 tweets that are just kind of okay. You'll really see an impact on there. You'll be able to get more reach, more visibility, and get a better conversation started. Photos, videos, we all know that social media is getting way more diverse in the type of content that it supports. At 3BL, we're seeing video post contents be way more impactful than just a couple sentences and a link share. So that's something to consider. Twitter now has, really embraced videos as well as photos in their tweets. Try to mix it up. Make sure you're keeping your content on point and relevant, but really take into account how important this visual content has become. We recently did a webinar over at 3BL about visual storytelling in CSR, and some of the examples in there were pretty intense. As far as, being able to tell a story, we worked with, UPS on this one about, they could have just put out a one-page press release talking about this particular employee and all the good he's done, but they went for a video, which told that story and pulled that emotion. So part of this is also in your strategic planning, what's the best way to tell that story. But biggest, walkaways is, be realistic about your time with social media. Are you one person dedicated entirely to social? Then you probably have a lot more room to play with versus someone who is, doing 20 other things and juggling their tasks. And then what's your budget? There are a lot of tools out there to help you schedule your content so that maybe you just sit down and schedule everything one day a week. If you want reports, if you want to show, how much your audience has grown, how many clicks you've got on a link, that's something to consider as well. Unfortunately, all the tools come with quite a large varying price tag. But with all of it, just stay yourself informed. There's tons of resources out there. We at 3BL love to be a resource as well. Myself and our CMO are often busy blogging about some of the best things that we've seen in relation to CSR, sustainability, and social media. So definitely give that a whirl. And now I will wrap it up and send over to Melissa to kick off.
Great. Thank you so much, Suzanne. All of those points are super insightful and very helpful. So now that we sort of have the context to why social media is so important for organizations and yourself, I want to dive into some steps and tactics we use every day here at Pyxera Global to increase our efficiency, our reach, and our impact. And so the first step is to find your platform. Like Suzanne said earlier, there are a number of platforms out there. There are 5 more than when we just started this webinar this morning. So chances are, if you're a smaller operation, you probably will not have the time to engage across, every social media network. So it's really important to think about your strengths and to understand your audience when you're choosing where to focus your energy. So think about where you have an opportunity to make the most impact. If you attend a lot of events and you love engaging with speakers and other attendees, Twitter is a great resource for you to do that. If you have a strong photographer on staff or you have access to professional photos, Instagram is a great place to showcase those. If you're a writer or your organization produces a lot of long-form written content, then LinkedIn is where you should place a lot of focus. Long-form written content performs much better on LinkedIn than on other platforms. So if you're looking to really make a splash in social media, don't go run out and sign up for every social media account imaginable. Take some time to really understand whether that platform is going to leverage your strengths and whether it makes sense for your brand and for your audience. So the Overdrive social media map that Suzanne shared earlier is a great place for you to start in doing that. The second step that I want to share is to identify your challenge. So like the first step in which you pinpoint your strengths, now is the time to focus on where you or your organization may be lacking. Chances are there is going to be a tool available to help you with these social media challenges. However, I understand it often can feel like there are 1,000 different social media tools and technologies out there, and that list can be extremely overwhelming. So we sort of tried to break it down by our favorite tools here, all of which we have tried and which we rely on a daily basis. And they're all sort of categorized by where the unique challenge is. So the first challenge is knowledge. If you feel like you are just lacking a basic understanding of social media, or maybe you want to dive a little bit deeper into some aspect to really become an expert, whether it be in analytics or social marketing or Twitter, lynda.com has really helpful, comprehensive, and relatively short online courses on a range of topics related to social media. I've taken several of these. I've found them helpful, and they're designed for someone with a limited amount of time, so they really pack in the information. Moving on, for many of us, the biggest obstacle to consistent social media activity is time. There is just not enough time in the day to tweet, Facebook, Instagram, etc. But being consistently active on social media is so critical to building and sustaining an online audience. So utilizing an automation service to schedule and send out posts for you throughout the day can be extremely helpful. You spend 15 minutes in the morning drafting tweets or Facebook posts, and then those can be scheduled to go periodically out throughout the day while you are taking care of other business. The favorites that we use here are Buffer and If This Then That. These are especially helpful when they're used in conjunction with one another, as they really allow you to customize your automation based on your unique needs. Also, if you are like us at Pyxera Global, one of the biggest challenges you may have is managing multiple brands. We have 4 brands here at Pyxera Global, all of which have very unique audiences. They have unique content. Their voices are very different, and so their needs are very different. So utilizing a management platform like Hootsuite is really helpful in saving time when it comes to monitoring and maintaining accounts for different brands simultaneously. Another big challenge for small and large organizations alike really is the inability to create interesting visual content. Like Suzanne mentioned, visual content is so important for boosting your online engagement. You'll read it time and time again. And so one of the tools that we utilize here is Canva, which is a free online graphic design tool, which enables anyone to create really dynamic and beautiful graphics for social media. They have hundreds of templates for cover photos, for Facebook ads, Twitter posts, and a lot more. And lastly, having a robust pipeline of shareable content can really be a struggle. You find an article here, but then you lose track of it throughout the day. You forget to tweet it out. Pocket is a great application that helps you to curate content as well as to organize it and share it for later. So as many of you are probably aware, these options and resources for social media are endless, but hopefully this breakdown can help you in identifying where you can increase some efficiencies when it comes to social media for yourself. And a bonus for all of these tools is that they all have free options, which is really important when you have a small budget. So now that we have gone over the logistics of how to maximize efficiency, it's important to move the focus to engagement online. Utilizing social media to share content is critical, but it really needs to be balanced with genuine engagement and interaction with your stakeholders. That's what it's there for, really. However, that in itself can be sort of daunting. It can feel awkward at first if you're not familiar with how to engage online. So here are just some quick tips for getting started for someone who maybe doesn't feel so familiar with this type of activity. The first and most obvious way, which is, Suzanne mentioned this earlier, is to just simply tag others who are related to your content or might find a post of yours interesting. They're more likely to see it. They're more likely to repost it. It seems obvious, but it really is surprising how often this small effort gets overlooked. The second tip is to identify key influencers and to get on their radar. Another way to do this is just to find a relevant person or organization to follow and then dig into his or her Twitter lists. You'll probably find a gold mine of other people that you can follow and then hopefully they will follow you back. The third tip, which sort of goes hand in hand with identifying key influencers, is to do your research. Make sure you have an understanding of the types of discussions that others in your space are having. Be aware of upcoming campaigns, new events, just general conversations that are happening in your area of expertise, so that you know of each opportunity to engage. And create your own Twitter list so that of relevant accounts, so that you can check in on them periodically and stay up to date. Another easy way to engage with your audience is just to ask a question. Ask a question that you think your audience might want to weigh in on or will have an opinion on. Tag other organizations and just start a conversation. And for more formal engagements, try participating in a Twitter chat like those mentioned by Suzanne. And lastly, once you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with this new type of engagement, try hosting your own campaign. Whether it's a Twitter chat, it's a photo contest, it's an Instagram photo contest. Be really creative in boosting this sort of interaction. Eventually, people will begin looking to you as a resource. Instead of you looking to others. So that's the ultimate goal. So the last step we're going to share, which is really 3 steps in one, is to track, analyze, and adapt. So one thing that you really have to understand when it comes to social media is that there is no silver bullet. I can't tell you the exact formula that you should use to boost your online engagement. It really differs from brand to brand. And social media is constantly evolving, and so is your brand and audience. So you should really be flexible in your approach to online activity. And one way to do this is to track your activity. So track what you're posting, where you are posting, what time of day you're posting, and then take some time to analyze its impact. You can use the performance data provided by platforms themselves, like Facebook and Twitter. They have pretty decent analytics for this information. Or you can invest in a more comprehensive tool, which pulls from all of your different social media accounts, as opposed to just seeing, the isolated platform performance. And these comprehensive tools, some comprehensive tools that we use here are Sprout Social and SumAll. They're really great for this type of integrated analysis. And an added bonus of this, of these reports that these resources produce, is that they help to showcase the value of your efforts to senior leadership in your organization or to a board of directors. And then you can use these insights that are gathered to adapt your efforts to be more impactful. So whether it is by curating certain content by social network, or adjusting the time of day that you post, to what content you actually publish, you can really use these analytics to boost your efficiencies. And another important piece of data that really shouldn't be overlooked is your own time. So being cognizant of how much time you spend on each platform, because your time and your employees' time is really valuable. So you need to understand the opportunity cost of your social media efforts by tracking not only your impact online, but also the time that you spend on each platform. And then that way you can adapt your efforts based on what platform proves to be most effective and where your time produces the most impact. So that is an overview of those 4 steps I just discussed. I know each of these topics could probably be a separate webinar in itself, but we only have 30 minutes, so we'll have to close out here. But we are going to make all of these slides available to those who tuned into the webinar today. So you can take advantage of the resources we discussed, and you can do additional research into the tools that we suggested. And unfortunately, we don't have any additional time for questions, but if questions did come through, whether it be through Google Plus or Twitter, we will be sure to answer those offline. And I just want to thank everyone who joined us today. I hope that this session was helpful to you and that you all feel prepared to take your social media either for yourself or your organization to the next level. And I want to thank Suzanne and 3BL Media for joining us today. Your industry insights were super helpful, Suzanne, so thank you so much. And thanks everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day.